SAO Alicization Episode 2. What got cut from best buddy Eugeo? So what's up guys, Foxen here. First off, let me give you a huge thank you. There's actually a lot of interest for the first changes video for episode 1. Definitely do like and comment to continue seeing these weekly. And yes, I do read everything you post. Anyway, let's dive into the Underworld. Oh, that cliffhanger ending. What exactly happened to Kirito? You're actually still left in the dark about this in the light novel. However, you do get a little bit more about what happened with Asuna afterwards, and I have a strong feeling they're gonna flash back to this later. So you had Kirito stabbed by Johnny Black. Kirito was slowly dying. Asuna ran into him telling him to hang in there. She quickly called the police on her phone. Kirito's last words to Asuna were, "Asuna, sorry." Kirito just lay there unconscious as the medical team checked his breathing. Kirito's respiratory system had failed. Unfortunately, Asuna could only watch nearby, resisting the urge to scream. She informed the paramedics of what she thought the chemical was. Meanwhile, Kirito's heart rate was drastically dropping. His heart stopped, Asuna heard them say. Unsurprisingly, Asuna was in deep shock. Asuna then saw the moment his heart rate stopped pulsing on her phone. Then it skips into the Underworld. In case you really want to know what happened to Kirito, here's an obvious spoiler. Kirito's heart did indeed stop. This unfortunately meant he suffered some brain damage due to the lack of oxygen for a time period. And let me just oversimplify it, but Kirito is hooked up to the Soul Translator to heal him. Anyway, let's enter the Underworld. At the start of the episode, you see Kirito awakening in this strange fantasy world. You saw him trying to recall some of the past events. Now Kirito actually gave himself a little bit of a refresher. He thought to himself, full name, Kirigaya Kazuto, 17 years old and 8 months. He lives in the Saitama area with his mother and younger sister. A key part to this is that Kirito couldn't recall getting assaulted by Johnny Black or Laughing Coffin at all. Kirito's final memory was of him asking Asuna to come with him to the US. And yes, unfortunately, Kirito did not recall her answer, only her smile. As for Kirito trying to figure out whether this was reality or not, before checking out his new clothing, Naobo Kirito noticed how this body still had his past scar on the left middle finger, and this marking on his right thumb. It must be real life. During this, you saw Kirito considering whether this was a possible dream. This included this yellow butterfly landing on his hand. This butterfly scene was anime original. In the novel, the closest thing you saw to this was Kirito pulling out this small earthworm. This green little thing kept making this soft cry. Kirito didn't know of this type of creature existing in Japan or anywhere else in the world. Naobo Kirito then noticed the extreme detail of this mystery world. VR worlds like SAO or any world used by the Seed use something called detail focusing. This allowed whatever spot you were looking at to be fully detailed, but not the stuff around it. This was currently a limitation of the VR hardware. This meant that sudden movements would create this slight lag in your vision before you saw the details clearly. However, this wasn't the case here, so it must be reality. The technology for VR worlds to mimic this shouldn't be possible. Anime Kirito almost immediately thought that this place must be the Underworld created by the Soul Translator. On the other hand, Naobo Kirito thought about 3 possibilities. The first was this advanced VR place, not necessarily the Underworld. The second option was that he became part of this illegal experiment. He must have been placed in some remote region. And the third option was the best. Kirito might have died or been transported into this fantasy world. It was now Kirito's job to defeat the Demon King. Hey Kirito, Kazuma says hi. Naobo Kirito then thought that at least Kayaba was kind enough to give this introduction explanation before taking off. For this world, there was nothing at all. Anyway, as for a good chunk of Asuna that I wish they kept in, Naobo Kirito continued to question this mystery world. He thought about how Asuna would have surely found a way to identify this place, unlike himself. At the very least, she would have been quick to take action. Kirito now felt he was super lost without her. During the past 2 years, Kirito had discussed almost everything he did with her. Suddenly now without Asuna, he felt like half of his brain was missing. Next up, Kirito at the watering hole. They actually cut this shorter in the anime after Kirito heard that sound in the distance. Naobo Kirito couldn't believe the purity or taste of this water. This alone removed the thought of this being a virtual world. Even the atmosphere wasn't capable of producing flowing water with this texture. As for Kirito getting that glimpse of young Eugeo and Alice, definitely love the scene more in the anime, especially with the rich animation. This scene was actually only 3 sentences in the novel, although to be fair, they did have this visual for it. Cut from this was Kirito thinking about what he saw. This memory shouldn't be possible. There weren't any forests or rivers like that where he lives, and he's never had friends with those hair colors before either. The children he saw also looked like they were wearing fantasy clothing. The flux-like acceleration meant he should have been inside the VR world for 10 days at most, which is why he shouldn't be feeling nostalgic about some random memory. Next up, Kirito meeting the Gigas tree and best buddy Eugeo. Naobo Kirito noticed how the tree was absorbing all nutrients around it, which is why the area looked cleared off. A change for meeting Eugeo too. Originally, Eugeo was watching Kirito from behind the massive tree the entire time. Anime Eugeo only seemed to notice Kirito after getting close enough. As for novel Kirito's thoughts on Eugeo, to him it looked like Eugeo was either 17 or 18, and he noticed the same style clothing as himself. Something more interesting was how Kirito thought that Eugeo couldn't be considered a Westerner, but also not an Easterner either. Then the moment when Kirito saw Eugeo's face, he felt like if his soul was in deep pain, although only for a brief moment. As for Eugeo's greeting, novel Kirito was super surprised at Eugeo speaking perfect Japanese. This place definitely didn't exist anywhere in Japan. Anyway, a lot of these two intro conversation was kept the same. Noble Eugeo did make a note about how Kirito's black hair was unusual in this area. It was possible he was born in the south. After Eugeo agreed to take Kirito to talk to the guards, Noble Kirito had further thoughts. So far he concluded that Eugeo was not an NPC. Eugeo's replies were way too natural for this artificial personality program. His actions also didn't resemble those of NPCs. To him, the owner of this floodlight had a really kind personality. He would have to thank him in real life personally. In the anime, this differed. Anime Kirito still continued to question whether Eugeo was an NPC or not. During their little self-introduction, Kirito was trying to find Eugeo's name in his memory, although no luck. Next up, Eugeo talking about his childhood friend Alice. Slight difference with the term they used. Eugeo's sacred task is now referred to as a calling in the anime. The rest of the Alice discussion also got abridged. Anime Eugeo left out the part about young Alice being chained in front of the village. Novel Eugeo further mentioned how he wanted to use the axe to attack the Integrity Knight, but his body wouldn't move at all. I'm actually really surprised that the anime left out that Alice was about to get executed at the central city. Perhaps it's a little too obvious that Alice is still around. Noble Kirito here was in deep thought after hearing the name Alice. Kirito felt this mixture of loneliness and nostalgia shaking his soul. He thought it was strange that the name was similar to Alice from Alice in the Wonderland novel, which also connected back to Rath and the Soul Translator. All of this being a coincidence would be way too surprising. Kirito then shifted his thoughts to Eugeo standing in front of him. Eugeo spoke about this memory from 10 years ago. However, the Soul Translator experiment began only 3 months ago. The 3 times acceleration wouldn't match up with this. Perhaps this whole place was sped up even more. Now for a good chunk cut out for the anime. Noble Eugeo brought up how Kirito looked the same age as himself. Wasn't Kirito also assigned the sacred task too? Ditching your sacred task, then traveling should be something that's impossible. Noble Kirito then came up with further thoughts about this. It was obvious that Eugeo wasn't a simple NPC from what he witnessed, but at the same time, Eugeo's actions seemed to be bound by absolute rules. It seemed similar to how NPCs couldn't deviate from set boundaries. Noble Kirito then asked if there was anyone else who ever broke the Taboo Index and got taken to the capital. Eugeo explained that in their 300-year history of their village, the only case of this ever happening was for Alice. Here, Kirito was shocked at the 300 years mentioned. That shouldn't be possible. Perhaps the actual acceleration was several hundreds or 1,000 times. Anyway, after Kirito heard about Eugeo making minimal progress on the Gigas tree, he wondered about something. In this artificial world, someone must have intentionally placed this here, although Kirito had no idea why. Oh, and Noble Kirito noticed how Eugeo swinging the axe so fluently was as if sword skills existed in this world. Next up, Kirito's own chopping attempts. A change here with Kirito calling the sword skill smash, instead of the sword skill horizontal in the novel. As for Eugeo examining the Gigas tree's remaining life, Noble Kirito actually thought about how it's strange that the name was a combo of English and Latin. Seems that English words made up the world's so-called sacred arts. It was likely that Eugeo didn't know he was speaking the language called Japanese either. Next up, Eugeo putting the axe away. The novel actually mentioned some other weapons in the shed, including this long leather item. Further cut was a talk about not stealing. Right here, Kirito asked why the village even needed guards if stealing was forbidden. Eugeo explained that the guards protected the village from the dark forces. On the other side of the mountain was the land of darkness, where the light of Solace couldn't reach. In that dark land lived demi-humans like goblins, orcs, and other horrible monsters. It was the duty of the Integrity Knights to protect the mountain range. And then for a major important piece cut out, Eugeo mentioned how every 1,000 years or so, the light of Solace would weaken. At that time, the dark forces led by the Dark Knights would try to invade. In that great war, the guards, sentinels, and the Imperial army led by the Integrity Knights would fight back. Eugeo was super surprised that Kirito didn't know any of this. It was supposed to be a tale that even young children were taught. Next up, the two meeting the town guard, Jink. In the novel, both of these did meet this guy, but the rest of this is anime original. I'm talking about their little sword test. And you might be wondering why. I see there being 2 very good reasons. The first would be to make Jink more of a character early on. From this, you could surely tell that he's gonna show up later. And the second reason, Kirito just demonstrated that some sort of sword skills do exist in the Underworld. Next up, the two arriving at the church. The anime added Kirito mentioning how it was weird that no one doubted at all that he was the lost child of Vecta. As for Silica here, here's some skip details. She's supposed to be the apprentice sister studying at the church to learn the sacred arts. Then you got Kirito's conclusion at nighttime. Normal Kirito thought about how the Rath company only had one Soul Translator. 3 more were supposed to be rolled out soon. Still, that wouldn't be enough for 300 villagers, and it should have also been impossible to secretly gather thousands of test players as well. Anime Kirito then quickly jumped to the conclusion that these people must be copies of newborns born and raised in VR. In other words, artificial floodlights. Kirito in the novel took a good while to reach that conclusion. Kirito first thought about the possibility of them being AI, although current AI didn't have real intelligence. Eugeo, for example, showed very natural human expressions. The highest top-level AI that Kirito was familiar with was Yui. It was after only monitoring thousands of players that Yui was able to build up this amazingly large database to reply from. Yui might be considered real intelligence. However, Yui was not perfect. Yui would sometimes express mild confusion when her database didn't have the information. Eugeo and the villagers were vastly different. Now, getting into the talk about the artificial floodlights. Assuming Kirito was right, Rath could be reaching into the realm of the gods. And next up, that mysterious ending. Technically, all of this is anime original. You might have guessed what this white tower is. It's actually the so-called Axiom church in the central city. As for who this naked lady is on top, she goes by many names. For now, just know that she's the highest ranking leader of the Axiom church. She's known as the admin. It's actually interesting how they're showing you her this early on in episode 2. In the novel, you might have had a slight reference to the leader, but you don't find out or get any concrete details until way later. I actually do like how they're giving you a taste this early on. Right now I am planning to do a video explaining this Underworld. That's coming up later. I'm trying to figure out how exactly to split up the information. It might be several videos. Either way, that wraps up this in-depth breakdown. Definitely do like and subscribe if you want to see these weekly. Oh, and share with your buddies too, especially if they love SAO. But anyway, more importantly, let me hear from you now. Question of the day. What do you think so far about best buddy Eugeo? Does he remind you of any other anime characters? Is Kirito now trapped inside of another VR world? And what do you think about the mysterious Underworld so far? Anyway, definitely give a colossal thumbs up and subscribe. If you're new to the channel, I put out 5+ anime videos here every week. Don't miss my in-depth videos for SAO Season 3 Alicization on the weekends. If you missed it, check out my changes video for episode 1. That took so much work and it's out now. So hit bell notifications, subscribe, and I'll see you guys later.